Welcome back to another construct video, and in this video we're carrying on with our Pokemon game. Now in the last video we looked at being able to move in and out of buildings, and this one we're going to be looking at actually moving back to our battle system we set up right at the very beginning. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is right click and we're going to insert a new object, and this is going to be our tool grass. So it's going to be a sprite and we should give it a name, tool grass. Click anywhere, and just like before, there's an image file inside the description, courtesy of a Google Drive that you can use. So this is my one here, and I'm just going to change this hitbox size to the bounding box like so, just because I think it works much nicer. Once it's in there, I can place a couple of these down. So I'm just going to create a little grid. There we go. So I've got my tool grass in place. I'm also just going to take my player and move them a little bit closer, make testing a little bit quicker today. So let's move on to our world events. So we're going to insert a brand new event, and we're going to check if the player is overlapping our grass. So we can scroll down and find our tool grass. Now we don't want this to trigger all the time. So we only want this to ever trigger when the player is moving. So we're going to find our player and check if he's moving. And what we're then going to do as well is apply a randomness to how often this is going to trigger, because we don't want it to do battle every time we touch tool grass. We want it to trigger every so often. So for this, we're going to go to System and compare two variables. So we're going to get a random number. So we're going to round this random number up to a whole integer. Then get random, and for a random number it's going to be between 1, and then this is the bit that's up to you about how common you want this to happen. Construct, or at least the construct file that we've got at the moment, will be running at 30 frames per second, which means if we do 300 it gives us a 1 in 10 chance. I've actually found with testing that that is much nicer and is close to the original game 1 in 600, but for testing today, just so it's a little bit quicker, I'm going to go 1 in 300, so 1 in 10 chance, and we're just going to put equals 1. So if that random number equals 1, we're going to start a battle. So with that in place, we can then add an action. We'll go to our system, and the first thing we do is we need to set some values, because we want to make sure that our computer health is being reset. So I'm going to put that back to 20, and we'll sort this out a bit better when we start looking at Pokemon data properly. We should make sure we set our own health, so set value of player's health. I'm going to set this to about 20 again, and then finally we can add an action and we can go to the battle layout. So scroll down, and then we're going to go to layout and battle. So that's our first bit set up. We can now enter tool grass and start a battle. And I need to move my player back to the top layer, so I'll do that in just a second, so it doesn't look as silly as it does. So if I move around for a little bit, eventually I will get myself into a battle. And you see there's quite a bit of time there before I get into a battle, so it's not feeling too annoying, because that's not what we want. So let's move my player back to the top layer. Next thing we want to do is, if we win a battle, we want to go back to this particular layout and in this exact spot. We don't want the layer to restart. So how do we tackle that? Well, we're going to start with a world event. And before we go to battle, we're going to add a new action. I'm going to make use of our previous layout. So I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to set the value of previous layouts. And this is going to equal layout name. So storing which layout we're going back to, because you might have multiple layouts at this stage. So this needs to happen before we go to the battle. Next, we've got a bit of code here that puts us in the place of our previous layout in green. We don't want this. We don't want this to trigger, because this is going to put us in a certain point in the map. We want to return to the exact location we were at beforehand. So there's an easy fix around for this. We're just going to right click, add a new global variable, and this is going to be in battle. This is going to be a Boolean, and by default we're going to set it to false. So what we're going to do is just right click, add a condition to here, and we're just going to check if we're in a battle or not. So compare Boolean, or is Boolean set in battle, and we're just going to invert this. We can then copy and paste this line of code, and we're just going to remove this line here because this one doesn't matter, and we can invert this back. So now we're saying if the layout starts and we've been in a battle, we then want to destroy the player, and then we're going to spawn a new one. So to do this, we're just going to add an action, system, and we're going to create a new object, and this is going to be our player. So we've created our player, but where do we want our player to spawn? Well, we actually need to store its X and Y position. So I'm just going to hit done for now. We're going to come back to this line of code. We're going to create two new variables. So we're going to add a global variable. We're going to call players old X, and copy and paste this, and players old Y. And just before we enter a battle, we're going to store the player's location in this particular layout. So we're going to set the value of players old X, and this is going to be the player's current X position in the world. And we're going to do the same for the Y's. System, set value, players old Y, and this is going to be player dot Y. And again, both of these need to happen before the battle. And now when we come back to this line of code here, we can change the X and Y to be players old X and players old Y. So spawning the player in the correct place when they return from the battle. Now, before they actually get to this stage, we actually need to be able to return from a battle. So let's go to our battle events. And there's two reasons why we're going to return to a battle. And we've got it if you win or if you lose. So the moment that you win, what we're going to do is we're going to return you back to the battle. So first thing that we can do is we can add our little trigger that we've had before. So we can add our signal. So we're going to do system and then wait for signal, and this is going to be enter or continue, I think we've called it. I'm going to check that in just a sec. So continue, and if we just double check our code here, you'll see that signal enter, so it isn't enter, sorry. So we're going to have that signal be enter to check we've pressed the enter key. And this just means we get to see the actual message beforehand. So enter. And I'm just going to check one more time that that is with a lowercase e. It is excellent. So we're going to add a new action, system, scroll down, and go to layout by name, and this is going to be our previous layout. We can then take these two lines of code and copy them for you have lost. So now the moment we press enter, it will go to the previous layout, and then when we go to the previous layout, it's going to check if we've been in a battle and then send us to a place. So final thing we need to do is actually say that have we been in a battle or not. And for this, we're just going to add an action, system, and we're just going to set the Boolean in battle to be true. And again, all this needs to happen before we go to that layout. And then the moment that we've returned, we're just going to turn that back to false. So set Boolean in battle false. And this still means we can go from building to building, and only if we enter the new layout after we've been in battle will it return us to our old place. So let's do another test. I'm just going to make sure that my player is on top. I can't remember if I've done that already. And let's see what it looks like. So I move around the level and eventually I will get into a fight. And again, you might want to adjust these timings. Even 1 in 300 is a little bit slow. There we go. So I've now got a battle, fight. Let's see if I can win this now. And I think I'm going to lose this fight. I've won. So you've won. I'm going to hit enter and I'm back in the exact spot that I've came from. Final bit of code that we're going to look at today is we're going to actually make it so we can decide what spawns inside of our wild grass. Now to do this, we're going to add an instance variable. So I just take this bit of grass here and add a new instance variable. And I'm going to call this root. Now it's really easy for me to just add a number and just say this is the Pokemon that's going to spawn. But actually what's going to happen in most Pokemon games is you enter a route and then there's a chance that certain Pokemon can spawn in those routes. And there's different spawn rates for different Pokemon. Some can be very common and might spawn up 60% of the time. Some are as low as a 1% chance of spawning. So I'm going to show you how we can set that up. So we can create a variable called root and it's going to have the default value of 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these bits of grass and I'm going to just do it by doing that and just unselect my player by holding shift and clicking. So the route, I'm going to set all of these to be route 1. So these are all part of route 1 and these will all spawn the same Pokemon. So we also need a new object and this is going to be an array and this is going to be called route Pokemon. This is going to store what Pokemon spawn in which routes. So we can go to our world events and we're going to make use of this on start of layout line. And the first thing I'm going to do is add a comment because there's 3 parts that we need for this array and it can get a little bit confusing. So we'll start with the Z axis. So the Z axis is going to control what route we are on. We then move to the Y axis. This has got 2 values. So value 1 or value 0, because we start from 0 in computer science. So value 0 is going to be the Pokemon that is going to spawn. And value 1 is going to be the capture or the chance to spawn. So that's going to be our chance to spawn. And then finally we move to the X, which is going to be our data. And that's going to increase by 1 each time. Arrays are a little bit confusing, especially because we're dealing with a 3-dimensional array, but hopefully you'll get the idea as we go along. So I'm going to add an action. It's going to take in our route Pokemon, and we're first going to set its size. So for its width in the x-axis, this is how many Pokemon are going to spawn. I'm going to say that I'm going to have no more than 10 Pokemon spawn in one particular area. You can easily increase this number to be as big as you want, and you can have it so every single Pokemon could spawn, but I'm going to keep it really simple and go 10. In terms of the heights, we've only got 2 things on our y-axis, which is Pokemon and chance to spawn, so that's going to be 2. And in terms of our depth, this is how many particular routes that you want in the game. So I'm going to say my game is going to have 20 routes by the end, or 20 different patches of grass that can spawn 20 different types of Pokemon. So that's for you to decide. I'm going to hit done. I'm actually going to move this just above my comments, and then we're going to start filling in this array. So I'm going to add action, scroll down to route Pokemon, and we're going to set X, Y, and Z. So we're going to start actually from the bottom. So Z is going to be our route, 0 is going to be our Pokemon, and then the X is going to be the 0 Pokemon or the first Pokemon in this particular list. The value at the bottom is going to be which Pokemon is going to spawn, and I'm just going to put 30 as a random number. If you're not sure which Pokemon 30 indicates to, all we do is we go to our Battle Pokemon or Pokemon Computer, edit animations, and we're looking for number 30. So in this case, it'll be a Nidoqueen. And you can pick from these different ones. So I know 53 Psyduck, so I'm going to pick Psyduck for my other one. So before I put that in, I need to actually put the chance that's going to spawn. Easiest way to do it is just copy and paste this, and then we're just going to click again. So we're still dealing with the 0 Pokemon item. We're still dealing with route 1, but we want to actually deal with the capture rate, which is now 1. So I'm going to say this has a 50% capture rate. So a little bit confusing, but hopefully you'll get the idea. Let's do a couple more. So I'm going to copy and paste these. So we'll start with the first one. So now we're dealing with Pokemon 1 in our list. So we've done Pokemon 0, we'll do Pokemon 1, and this is going to be 53, which is our Psyduck. And then we've got the chance of Psyduck spawning. So again, we change 0 to 1 because we're dealing with item 1 now. And I'm going to say this has got a 40% chance of spawning. And then we'll copy this one more time. And we're now dealing with Pokemon number 2. Value, let's see what's at 100. And then again, the capture rate. So Pokemon number 2, everything stays the same. And then the capture rate has got to be 10 because again, I've got 10, 40, and 50 gives us 100 total. Try to keep it to 100, if not you'll break the next bit of code, which is choosing how we take this information and use it to spawn our Pokemon. So final thing that we need to do is we're going to add a sub event. So when we're overlapping grass, we're going to add a blank sub event below. I'm going to do some checks to work out if or what Pokemon should be spawned. Now before we add this blank sub event, we just need a couple of global variables. So the first one is going to be called random Pokemon. And I'm just going to set that to 0, and I like to move this variable just down to here because it only really has to do with this little section here. And we need a second one, which we're going to call chance counts. And I'll explain that use in just a sec. So the first thing that we need is we're going to double click and we're going to use a system variable. And this is going to be a repeat. And the number of times that we're going to repeat is going to be the root Pokemon dot height. And this is how many different items that we've got in that list. Now, when we're doing this repeat, we're going to add another blank variable below. So there's another blank sub event, and this is going to check which Pokemon we're going to spawn. Now, first thing that we need is we need to generate a random number. So I've got this in this line of code here. So I'm going to set random Pokemon, and this is going to be around between 1 and 100. So again, nice and simple line of code to add in. So just add that one in, and this is going to give us a random value that we're then going to use inside of our logic. So this first line here, we're going to add a blank sub event, and the first thing I'm going to do is a system check, compare two variables, and we're going to start by checking random Pokemon. I'm going to check if that number, that randomly generated number between 1 and 100, is less than or equal to, and this is going to be root Pokemon dot at. It's going to take the X value first. Now the X value is going to be the loop index, so how far we are through that loop. And again, our loop's just looping through every single item we've got in that list. Now, in terms of this Y value, it's going to be 0 if we're looking at the Pokemon and 1 if we're looking at the encounter chance. We want the encounter chance for this, so it's going to be a 1. And then finally, it's going to be tallgrass.root. So we're getting the root of that particular tall grass, and close that bracket off. Now, if we do land on this one, what do we want to do? We're going to do a couple of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is start by taking a system variable, and we're going to set the value of computers Pokemon, and we want this to be root Pokemon dot at, and then this is going to be the same again. So loop index. This time we want the Pokemon, so we're going to write 0 instead of 1, and then our tallgrass dot root to get the current root of our tallgrass. Next, we're going to go to system, and we're going to stop loop. Just stop this loop carrying on. And then finally, we're actually going to not add a new action, we're going to go to battle. So I'm going to take this and just move this down now. This is going to happen inside this loop instead. If this doesn't happen, we're then going to right click at the side here and add an else statement. Now, I mentioned this variable called chance count. Now, if we look at our table, we've got a 50, 40 and a 10, and because we're going for a number that's less than, if our random number is say 45, then it's less than 50, this Pokemon will activate, but this one won't and this one won't. What we need to do is find a way for all three of them to have a chance to spawn. So what we're going to do is take whatever Pokemon this is, and we're going to add its previous chance count to this count here, and we're going to use that to then increase the value each time. This essentially gives us a range, so we're looking between 0 and 50, 50 and 90, and then 90 and 100, as opposed to 50, 40, 10. So we're going to add action, system, add to the chance count, and this is going to be root Pokemon dot at, and again, similar to what we've done before, loop index, we're looking at 1 because we want the chance count, and then final one is going to be our tallgrass dot root. And then instead of this one here, we're just going to add chance count to it at the end. Final thing that we need to do then is, once we return from battle, we want this chance count to go back to 0, and this just resets that. So we're just going to go here, and we'll do this at the start of this layout. So on start of layout, we can put this all at the bottom. So system, set value of chance count to 0. So let's do our test, and fingers crossed this works, because I've had a bit of issue with this code today. So if I walk into the tall grass, I've got a chance of a Nidoqueen, a Psyduck, and I don't know what my last Pokemon's going to be, but it's only a 10% chance. So I walk around for a bit, and eventually I might lower this down. Actually, 300 is even a bit too generous still. Eventually I'll get myself into a battle. There we go, we've got a Nidoqueen. And I'm not going to fight this, I'm just going to restart this layout very quickly and we'll go again. And let's see if we get a different Pokemon this time. So again, 50% chance for a Nidoqueen, 40 for a Psyduck, and then 10% for my mystery one that I'm not quite sure what it is. So Psyduck. So this is a really nice addition to your game because now we can move between the world and the battle and jump between them. We'll start looking at adding our own individual Pokemon and stats a little bit later in this series, but if you have been enjoying this series, please give me a like. Please let me know also in the comments, are you using premium construct or free construct, as we are starting to get near the end of our free 40 events. I'm curious on how many of you are actually using a free version or not to follow this series. So comment that below, subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already, and I'll see you in the next video.